I offer my most loving pranams at the divine lotus feet of our most beloved Swami. Brothers and sisters, Sai Ram to all of you. It is my pleasure to welcome and introduce Brother Brian Brunius to our center here today. Brian was a very successful TV producer who produced many successful shows for PBS WNet Web TV. However, being an ardent Sai devotee, last few years he has spent most of his time in Prasanthi Nilayam serving our beloved Swami in the different projects in the ashram. In fact, he just returned to the United States this February after coordinating a project called the Pigeon Project, which our beloved Swami blessed as an initiative to help migrate pigeons out of Sai Kulvanthal. I'm sure he'll share the success of that project with all of us here today and also narrate his very interesting and unique spiritual journey and the most dramatic way in which our beloved Swami introduced Brian to the physical form of Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba. So without further ado, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Brian Brunius.
Sarah, when I walked in the door and I saw all of the smiling faces, I was reminded of the message that Swami has been giving me from the very beginning, which is that all I have to do is open up and receive love and learn how to open my heart and participate in the love that is everywhere around me. And I see those smiling faces so much in the devotees here. I feel that love again that I don't feel too much on the streets in New York City. And now I remember why Swami wants us to have these centers. And I'm terrible at attending centers, and I'm terrible at participating in Sai community. And now I remember. So I don't have anything to say to you today, but I'm going to open my heart and try to let Swami's love come in, and maybe his words will come out of my mouth. You know what happened for me? Some of you may have heard me speak before, so I'm not going to say all the same things. I don't know what I'm going to say, actually, but it's a miracle that I'm standing here today. It's Swami's miracle, because I'm not supposed to be alive today. I'm not supposed to be a spiritual person today. If my life had continued the way it was before Swami came into it, I would either be dead or in prison or a criminal of some kind. And I'm not those things today. I'm healthy and fairly honest and hardworking, and I'm mostly good things today because of Swami. What happened for me is that when I was young, when I was in college, I was very much against any idea of God, and I didn't believe in any God. I didn't have any love in my heart. I was a very unhappy person, and I was also a very sick person physically. I was dying. I had liver and kidney failure, and there was no chance that I was going to live. I was in a hospital for many months. And someone came to visit me in the hospital one day who told me, he gave me a very simple message, which is that you may not believe in God, but I'm here to tell you one very simple thing. There is a kind and a loving and a benevolent force in the universe, and if you reach out to it and ask for help, it will reach back and help you. And that night in the hospital, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling very cold, unable to move. And I tried to reach to pull the covers over my body, but I couldn't move. I couldn't reach my hands out to pull the covers over my body. And I got very scared, and I tried to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. And I suddenly was struggling inside of myself, fighting to try to move, and I realized that I was floating in the air looking down at my body. And the thought suddenly came to me that this is death. It was very peaceful, extremely peaceful. I'd never felt so peaceful in my life. And in that moment, I had that experience where my whole life flashed before my eyes. I saw all the people I had known. I relived many experiences in my life. And the last of them was that man in my hospital room earlier in the day, telling me that I may not believe in God, but believe me that there is a kind and a loving force in the universe, and if you reach out and ask for help, it will help you. And at that moment, floating above my body, I made a decision that I wanted to live. And I prayed, God, I know you're not really there. I know you're not there, but just in case you can hear me, I need help, and I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do to live. And at that moment, I had what they call a white light experience. The sky opened above me, and a light came down, and I felt myself going upward and upward and upward, until I had a very personal experience with something that I would call God. And that was the beginning of a real spiritual transformation to me, because in 30 days that I met this being. I didn't know who it was yet. In 30 days, I was living on the West Coast at the time. He told me move to New York. And I have a lot of stories, so I'm not going to tell all of them, because I really want to tell you about what's happened in the last few years for me. So I'm not going to dwell in the past, but I moved to New York, and very soon after reaching New York, I started having dreams of Swami. And those dreams were very simple. I dreamt that I was a police detective investigating a murder in a house where everything was broken. All the glasses were broken, all the mirrors were broken, cupboards were opened, furniture was overturned. And always in the dream, I'd be going from room to room making notes on what I found, opening every cupboard, opening every drawer. And every cupboard I opened had a photo of Swami inside. And every drawer I opened had the same photo of Swami inside. And there was blood going from room to room. And in the end of the dream, I would come to a bedroom with a long, low dressing table and a mirror over the top of it. And in the center of the mirror was Swami's photo. And there were ashes falling from the photo down the front of the mirror, and the whole top of the dressing table was covered in ashes. And as if with a finger, somebody had written a phone number in the ashes. So in my dream every night, I'm with my notebook writing the phone number, but then I'd wake up and I couldn't remember the phone number. So I had this dream at first, every few nights, and then I started having it every night, and then I started having it twice a night, and 3 times a night, and 5 times a night. There were nights when I didn't want to go to sleep because I knew all I was going to do was have this horrible dream again. And every time I'd fall asleep, it would happen again. By the end, it was happening constantly. Every time I fell asleep, within a few minutes, I'd wake up having this dream. And I was really vexed. I couldn't sleep. I had black circles under my eyes, and I was telling my friends, I can't sleep. I think I need to get sleeping pills. I don't know why. I have this horrible dream over and over and over again. And a friend said to me, you have a notepad and a pencil in your dream. Why don't you keep a notepad and a pencil next to the bed? Because that phone number has to be the clue. And of course, I didn't know who was in the photo in my dream either. Some strange orange, shirt I'd never seen before. And so I kept a pad next to my bed, and every time I woke up, I'd try to, well, not every time, but I'd try to write down the phone number. And eventually, after about a week of trying, I woke up one morning and I had written down something that looked like a phone number. It had enough digits. I sort of prayed, and I picked up the phone in the morning, 8 in the morning, and I called the number. And someone answered, and I said, "Hi, I may have the wrong number, so pardon me if I'm disturbing you. But I saw this phone number in a dream." And the man said, "Oh, go on, that doesn't sound strange to me." So he said, "What did you see in your dream?" And I said, "Well, I saw an African man with big hair wearing an orange dress." And he said, "That's my guru, Sai Baba. He lives in India." And I talked to him for a few minutes. He was a member of the Manhattan Center. I haven't seen him around for some years, named Brother Rene Harris. And he told me about Baba. So he told me all about Swami, and he said, we have a group, a center that meets tonight. We sing some songs, and we pray, and we meditate together, and why don't you come? And you can get some literature and meet a few people. So that was the beginning for me, and that's how Swami called me. And what happened that day is that 3 really amazing things happened. First, I had a meditation, and I had been praying. I'd been praying all those months, for God to send me a teacher, because I'd started having these spiritual experiences. I started feeling the presence of God in my life, but I didn't know anything. I had no spiritual practice. I had no focus. I just had this desperate yearning for spiritual growth, and but I didn't know what to do. And so I'd been praying every day, God, send me a teacher, send me someone to show me the path. And that morning in my meditation, I was meditating, but I opened my eyes and Swami was standing in front of me, and I had a conversation with him. And in the photo in my dream, I had only seen, the top part of Swami's body. But in this meditation, Swami was standing fully in front of me. I could see his full long kurta, his dhoti. I could see the gold trim on the bottom. I could see his feet. He was really standing in front of me, and I said, if you're my teacher, please tell me what to do. And he said, not in very Swami words, but he said, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if you choose to stop smoking, stop eating meat, stop drinking alcohol, then you'll grow a lot faster. And so that was a strong experience for me. And from that moment, I stopped. I have never touched a cigarette or alcohol or meat since that day. Then a few hours later, I left my house, and I was walking down the street, and there was a used bookshop that had a sort of table on the sidewalk of sale books that were, I think, only $1. And of course, there was a book on the table. It had the exact same photo from my dream, which was at the time the only photo I'd ever seen of Swami. And it was called, what was it called? Something about the heart. What's that? Transformations of the Heart. The book was turned over, and I only saw the back of it. And it was the photo from my dream is on the back of the book. On the front, it's Swami holding someone's baby, a woman from New York. But on the back is the photo that was in my dream, and the book was turned over, so only the back was up. And I was walking by, and I just saw that exact photo from my dream. And I picked up the book and turned it over, and it was called Transformation of the Heart. And that's another sign for me, right? That's what I felt today when I walked in here. That's the difference between out there and in here. It's all about the heart. So I bought the book, and I decided to go to the park and read the book. And I got on the subway. And as I was riding the subway, I was standing up, holding onto the pole, swinging back and forth. And I suddenly realized that the person standing opposite me holding the pole had a ring on. And what was on the ring? But the exact same photo from the dream, the exact same photo from the book, on the ring, looking at me with Swami like this, the Abhastya. So I said, well, that's a sign, and this is supposed to happen. So I went to the park, I read the book, I spent the day praying and meditating, and in the evening I went to the Manhattan Center. Of course, I was wearing shorts and a short-sleeve shirt and sandals, and I'd never been to a Sai Center. And when I walked up to the front door, there was a little sign, "Welcome to the Manhattan Sai Center," and of course, it had a little photo on it, pasted onto the sign, and it was the same photo from the dream, from the book, from the ring. So I said, "Yeah, I'm in the right place." And but when I got in, the people were saying, "Oh, I don't know if you can come in. You're wearing shorts, and we don't allow that here." And they were all Indians, but I went in and I sat down, and the bhajan started, and something amazing happened in that bhajan. Everyone started singing, and I suddenly found, they didn't have this lovely projection thing with the words. I suddenly realized I knew every word to every song. And I don't know, it was just an amazing introduction to Swami and to a group of people who were not like ordinary people. We Sai devotees are a little bit strange because, we all have to work and have homes and jobs and families. It's not the purpose of life. It's just part of life. And I found something amazing with those people that I had never experienced in the outside world. That money wasn't the most important thing, that the house wasn't the most important thing, and that the bhajan, and that the group, that the connection with Swami was really the most important thing, and everything else was just a byproduct of that. So I started my life as a Sai devotee there in the Manhattan Center, where they taught me everything. They shared all of Swami's teachings with me. I got a seva position working on the Sai Sarathi newsletter, which most of you probably don't even know about, but it's a newsletter that goes out every month for the Mid-Atlantic region. And it's still published today, and I still work on it every month. And that's been more than 17 years. So that was 1995, and it was Swami's 70th birthday that year. And I had just only been a devotee for a few months, but there was a very large group of people organized to go to India for Swami's birthday. In fact, they'd taken almost an entire airplane, one of those huge Air India planes with 15 seats across or however many. And some of the people in this room were on that airplane. And it was the amazing day in 1995 when every Ganesh idol in the world drank milk. And of course, on the airplane, there were a lot of Indians carrying Ganesh idols for whatever reason. Maybe you all carry them in your pockets, I don't know, but about 30 or 40 people had their little Ganesh idols, and all the little milk, creamer things that the airline gives out with the coffee and tea were used up in the first half hour feeding milk to Ganesh, because everyone on the plane wanted to try. Then they wanted to try a second one or a third one to see if it was really working or not. And but anyway, that was an amazing day, and it was also a free trip for me, because the Sai group that organized all of the plane trip and all the tickets had gotten a few free tickets from Air India for booking almost a whole plane, and they offered me a free ticket. So I was young, I had never been to India, I'd never thought about India, I'd never wanted to go to India, but Swami was there, and I wanted to meet Swami. And most of the devotees who I had known at that time were people who'd been going to the ashram since, there were just a few people there. So they were devotees who'd had a lot of interviews, a lot of personal experiences, a lot of gifts from Swami. And I went there expecting to have a lot of close experiences with Swami. What happened is that we reached the ashram just before afternoon darshan, and we went to the foreign registration. They had special booths set up then because there were millions of people, and there was a special place for us, and we registered and we went to our shed, and then a bell was ringing, and everyone said, "Oh my gosh, it's darshan, we have to go now, we have to run." And we threw on these white clothes and ran for the darshan hall, which had just been built. It had only opened a few weeks before, and it was much smaller than it is now, and it was packed. There were huge crowds outside. No one was getting in, and I wanted to see Swami, but I tried to push my way to the front because that's what everyone was doing, pushing and shoving. I just sort of followed suit, and some Sevadal grabbed me and said, "What are you doing? Stop pushing!" And he grabbed me and he dragged me inside, and he said, "I've got a seat for you here." And another Sevadal came over a minute later and said, "What are you doing sitting there? You have to come over here." And he dragged me to somewhere else. And another one picked me up and dragged me somewhere else. And it happened about 10 times. And by the time they were done, I was sitting in the very front row of the fully packed hall, right on the edge of a big white marble line that went straight to Swami's front door. And I was sitting there looking down this long white line, and I saw Swami's orange robe. The way he walked with his hands holding, he would hold on to his robe, and take a step, and I just saw that foot step out of the house and onto the white line. And he stepped onto that white line, and he walked straight all the way to me, and staring at me the whole time, even though it's really very far. And he went from the bright sunlight into the darkness of the hall, and he got closer and closer and closer, and his image got closer and closer in my eyes. And he walked straight up to me, holding his robe with one hand and a few letters, I think, in the other hand. And he walked right up to me, all the way up to me, so that his toes, when he stepped up to me, went under the edges of my legs. And his robe was draped across my knees. And he looked down at me, and I thought, oh my God, this guy's like 7 feet tall. The way he was standing over me, he was looking down at me. And he said, I gave you the dream for 3 months. What took so long? And that's exactly what happened. I had that dream for 3 months until I couldn't sleep at night. It was so bad. And he said, what took you so long? And I was transported in that moment into a different state of consciousness. I was lost. I was floating in space. And after a minute, somebody hit me, and I looked up and I realized Swami had already walked, 75 feet away from me. I was just lost. And I sat there and I cried and I cried and I cried. And he gave his darshan, and the bhajan started, and that was the beginning of a pretty amazing time for me, because what had happened is Air India had given the Sai group this free ticket, and when they got the ticket put into my name, they asked me, how long do you want to stay for? And I said, well, how long is the ticket good for? And they said, well, it's good for 6 months. And I said, okay, I'll stay for 6 months. So I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never been to India, never been to the ashram. I had no idea. But I was young, I had a lousy job, so, I figured India's cheap, I might as well go and stay there for 6 months. So I had given up my apartment and left all my things with a friend, and, I went to India with just a suitcase, and, of course, nothing in that suitcase was useful, because I brought jeans and these kind of shirts, and in those days in the ashram, you absolutely couldn't wear, gents had to wear white, and so I got there, and I suddenly had nothing to do for 6 months except darshan every day. And of course, I'd been there with the big group of Americans, hundreds and hundreds of people I knew. All of them I knew from local centers. And but as the weeks passed, people kept disappearing. Most people couldn't leave their jobs for more than a week or 10 days or 2 weeks. So as the crowds thinned out after the birthday celebration, I found myself increasingly alone there with nobody I knew. And what happened is that the sheds in those days had a big sewage pond behind them, huge sewage pond for the ashram. It was before they built the sewage treatment plant. And there were no screens on the windows, and the sheds were full of mosquitoes. And I got malaria. And so I got really, really sick one day, high fever, vomiting, all of the terrible things that come with malaria. And but I didn't know what it was. I thought I just had the flu. And it got to the point where I couldn't walk. I would just fall down. And the shed was full of foreigners, but they were all Russians, and nobody spoke English, and nobody really knew me or cared about me all that much. Of course, it was all Swami's game. And so I just laid in my cot for days and days, unable to move. I wasn't even awake. I was unconscious. And I don't know. It's surprising that I didn't get dehydrated and die. But what happened is there was one American woman who was still there named Sheila Brown from the Manhattan Center. And Sheila got worried about me because she didn't see me. So she found someone, a boy, and she sent him in to the shed with lots of glucose water. And he found me, and he woke me up, and he made me start drinking. And she would come every day and stand outside the window and yell in at me while the boy forced, glucose biscuits and glucose water down my throat. And, she would scream encouragements through the window because the Sevadal wouldn't let her inside, and I was too weak to walk. And I don't know, after about 2 weeks, I don't know why nobody took me to the hospital, but I was just so miserable. And finally the day came where I felt like I could actually get out of bed, where I could walk a little bit. And I got up and I thought, well, I'll go for morning darshan. I'll go just when it starts, so I won't have to wait, I won't have to sit, and I'll just see Swami and come back. So I started walking, but I got only a few hundred feet, and then I had to sit and crawl back. The next day I went again, and I got, 1,000 feet, and I couldn't go anymore. Each day, for 3 days, I tried to get to the darshan hall to see Swami. And I knew if I could see him, I would suddenly be better. By the 4th day, I managed to get all the way to the hall, and the Sevadal wouldn't let me in because I told him I need to sit. Can I sit on the bench, on the sick bench? And he said, no, you can't sit on the sick bench. So he made me leave. I don't know why. And so the 5th day, finally, I got to the front of the darshan hall. I got inside, and I was so sick, I just sat on the floor and cried. And before the bhajan started, I don't know what was happening that day, but everyone got up and left. And I had come in, I was sitting really far in the back because it was so crowded. And Swami had already gone around and given darshan and gone inside the bhajan hall for the bhajan. And just then a huge block of people cleared out. And I crawled forward as far as I could, and I ended up on the white line again. And during the bhajan, Swami came out of the hall, and he walked around. And he came and he stood right in front of me. And he just looked at me. He just stood there. And he stared straight at me for 5-10 minutes. And he was sort of swaying back and forth to the music, tapping his hand on his leg, and just staring at me. And it was as if I was looking at the sunrise. All I saw was this giant ball of light, and Swami's eyes staring at me. And I could feel all of the energy rushing into my depleted body. I'd been so sick, so sick, so sick. And he just kept staring and smiling and staring and smiling. And he didn't talk to me. He didn't do anything. He just stared at me. And that's when everything amazing really started, because that sickness was a purification. And that period where Swami stared at me was a transformation. Later someone showed me a quote from Swami saying, don't ever underestimate the power of my darshan. My gazing upon you can completely transform you. And so that's what happened. And the next morning, someone came to me and said, Swami, I had an interview with Swami, and he talked to me about you, and he told me to give you a job. That was surprising, but I was also really bored. I had nothing to do in the ashram, and I was completely healed and re-energized after that experience the day before, and I said, great, I'm going to start working. And she said, now that the job doesn't really come with a lot of benefits, you just have to work hard every day, but the one thing is that you'll be working long hours, so you won't have time to line up for darshan. So you're going to get a darshan pass. And I now know that for me, that is the single greatest gift Swami can give, because not having to wait hours and hours for darshan is amazing. And it was better than I thought, because I not only got a pass to come in through the back gate, the VIP gate, but I got a front row seat every day for the rest of, for about 3 months. And during that time, one of my jobs was to bring packets of vibhuti to Swami to bless. It's not so important what happened during that time, but what's amazing is that I got so much interaction with Swami, and he materialized some things. He would stand there and ask me questions or tell jokes or talk to the people around me, and he would always do that little thing with his feet, put his feet under my legs and sort of tickle my legs with his feet. So, nobody else knew what was going on, but I knew Swami was giving me, it was so much attention. It felt like so much attention from Swami, and it felt like such a blessing. And I didn't really know I didn't understand what change was happening to me at the time, because, but I'll tell you, one of the most amazing things about being in the ashram for a while is that all of my senses started to calm down. You know, a young American boy. But I noticed within a few weeks of being in the ashram, all those thoughts started to subside. All of my desires, I kept craving like American foods and, you know, sweet things, and all of my desires started to go down. All of my interests started to subside. And my focus got clearer and sharper. And the only desires I had that didn't go down were the desires for, you know, attention from Swami. Every day, Swami, interview please. Swami, interview please. He got so tired of hearing it. You know, that's the desire he provoked in me again and again, that I want more. Swami, I want a ring. Swami, you gave me a mala, I want a watch. Swami, you gave me a watch, I want a ring, you know? Swami, you talk to me every day, but I want a private interview. And I'm sure everybody here knows that desire. It's such a tricky one, because I go there, you know, thinking, I don't want anything, Swami. Just let me be with you. And within days, I'm seeing people getting called into the interview in my room and thinking, Swami must not like me. Why isn't he calling me for an interview? But you know, I was getting a lot of attention at the time, and I felt really on top of the world. And you know, Swami hadn't done all that much. I wasn't getting a lot of, well, I guess it was visible, but I wasn't getting what I wanted, but I was getting so much, and I was so charged up by Swami's energy. But I was sort of running wild in the ashram, because I felt very special, so I thought I could do anything. I could go anywhere. I could do whatever I wanted. And one day, Swami put a stop to all of it. And this is an ongoing theme in my relationship with him. One day, Swami walked up to me in darshan, and I was sitting at that time with the professors from the university. And so all these older men were sitting behind me, and Swami walked up to me, and he looked down at me, and then he looked at the men sitting behind me, and he made a joke in Telugu. He said something in Telugu. And suddenly I heard everyone go, "Oh!" And they all started moving away from me. They moved back 6 feet away from me. And I looked around and I said, "What did Swami say?" And nobody would talk to me. They all went like this. And Swami just looked at me, and he smiled and nodded his head a little bit and walked away. And I was totally perplexed, so I got up. You know, darshan was over. I got up, I walked out, I went and did my job. And the next morning, I came back from morning darshan, and at the gate they said, "I'm sorry, you can't come in. It's not permitted." And so I didn't know what was going on. I thought, well, I'll wait for, you know, someone else to come, and they'll let me in, because I come here every day. And so I went to the regular gate, and the guy looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, you're not allowed to come in." And so then I went. I didn't know what else to do, so I waited around. I watched from outside the gate, and then I went to my job, and they said, "I'm sorry, you can't work here anymore. Give us your pass and my staff card." And I'd been given a special room, and I went to my room, and there was a Sevadal standing there, and he said, "I'm sorry, you have to move to the shed." And I was very confused, and I didn't really know anyone in the ashram except for a few people who from that day wouldn't talk to me. And I have no idea, even to today, what was said, what Swami said, but from that moment, nobody in the ashram, not one person would talk to me. And of course, when all the foreigners saw this, I was eating in the Western canteen at the time, once they saw that I had lost all my privileges and that I couldn't even go in for darshan, they wouldn't talk to me. Nobody would talk to me. Within a few days, I was completely frozen out. Nobody in the ashram would speak to me. Everywhere I went, people would move away from me. If I sat at a table in the dining hall, people would move to other seats. And I was so miserable. But what I had was this mala that Swami had given. And I was so lonely and so scared. I just was crying all the time. And I was trapped in India, right? I had nowhere to go. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anything outside of the ashram. I was really just sort of stuck there. And I kept thinking, this has to be a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's a bad dream. Something has to change. So I was just walking around all day. I couldn't go in for darshan. So I started carrying that mala in my pocket and praying all day, every day. Om Shri Sai Ram, Om Shri Sai Ram, Om Shri Sai Ram, Om Shri Sai Ram, Om Shri Sai Ram. Basically, from the time I woke up until the time I went to bed, and just sort of wandering around the ashram and wandering around the village, because I had nowhere to go and nothing to do. Even in the village, the shopkeepers wouldn't talk to me. Swami was really making it difficult for me. All I had was that mala, and it was my only link to Swami, because it was the one thing he had materialized with his own hand. Oh, I'd had a little silver box of vibhuti that filled up every day. And as soon as that event happened, that day came, the next day it was empty, and it never made vibhuti again. So that mala was the only connection I had to Swami. I thought. I didn't know. I didn't know at the time that every breath of air connects me to Swami. But I didn't know that then. I thought it had to be something physical. It had to be something Swami had given me. So I used that mala constantly. And what happened is that after a month of using that mala, 15, 16 hours a day, and wandering around, I suddenly realized that my eyes weren't seeing the world anymore. I was seeing something different through my eyes. I wasn't seeing faces anymore. I was just seeing spirits. I was walking through all kinds of weird situations, but I wasn't perceiving them like a person would. I was perceiving them from a different plane. My mind was completely quiet, and I was looking at the world through my spiritual eyes. And I suddenly had this amazing transcendental experience that went on for about a month, until one day they let me in for darshan. And of course what happened is Swami walked straight up to me and said, "Give," and took back the mala. At which point I didn't know then that the mantra could continue without the mala. I was really naive. I was really young spiritually. And I felt like that was the last blow. Everything had been taken away from me. And that day I took my passport and my ticket to a travel agent. And I said, "Do what you have to do. I'll pay any amount of money to change my ticket so I can go back to the U.S. now." And every Thursday, which was the day they would go, they would send a car to the Bangalore airport to reconfirm people's tickets. In those days, we didn't have the internet. And every Thursday night, the car would come back, and the guy would say, "I'm sorry, they won't change your ticket. They won't change your ticket. They won't change your ticket." And I thought I wanted to die. I was so miserable. I was just crying constantly. And again, they wouldn't let me in for darshan. Swami wouldn't come near me. Nobody would talk to me. The one thing that had given me consolation was taken away. And I just wandered around so sad and crying all the time. And so here's what happened. The way things always happen with Swami is that things stretch out for a long time. Problems will stretch out for a long time. Challenges, you're working on a seva project and it stretches out for a long time and nothing gets done. And then suddenly, at the last minute, every obstacle is overcome and the solution is presented. And that's how Swami always works for me. But what happened is that I was just at the end of my rope, and I had nowhere to go and nothing to do. And I was wandering around the ashram crying and walking past some apartment block, and a very old lady who I saw every day sitting on her steps because she was too old, I think, to go for darshan, called me over, and she said, "I see you crying every day. I see you wandering around crying during darshan every day. Don't you know what's going on? Don't you know what's really happening here?" And I said, "No, Swami hates me. He won't talk to me. He took away the only gifts he ever gave me. He took away my job. Nobody talks to me." And she said, "Don't you realize, what an amazing opportunity this is for you? That, Swami has not only brought you to India, but now he's controlling lakhs of people to not speak to you. He's controlling the whole ashram to give you this very specific experience that you need. He's custom-tailored every minute of this suffering for you, so that he can help you overcome your karma." And I was very cheered up by that. And about 2 hours after darshan was over that day, a young man came running up to me and he said, "Sir, you have to come with me. Madam is calling for you." And I said, "Well, who's Madam?" He said, "Madam, it's Madam. You have to come." And I don't know who that is. And he took me to an apartment building and knocked on the door, and a woman came to the door who I didn't know, and she said, I just had an interview with Swami. He's told me to take you to Bangalore. So get your bags, and we're going right away. We're leaving in a few hours for Bangalore. And so I didn't know what that was all about. But I was really happy that Swami was at least talking to someone about me, because he wasn't talking to me. He wouldn't even look at me, but he told someone to take me to Bangalore. And I later found out that she was the wife of one of the trustees of the Central Trust. And so she had a house in Bangalore, and we drove to her house in Bangalore. And we drove to her house in Bangalore, and she gave me a room, and she said, Swami at that time, Swami was giving a lot of discourses in which he said, if the father doesn't help you, pray to the mother. He used to say all the time, pray to the mother, because the mother can never watch her children suffer without doing something for them. So I had stopped praying to Swami during that time, and I was praying to the mother. Mother, please help me. Mother, please save me. Get me out of here. Take me away from all this. And I was just praying to the mother all day, every day. And I was saying, so what happened is this woman said, I said, why did you get me, and where are you taking me? And she said, Swami told me to take you to see the mother. And so I didn't know what that was either. But when we got to Bangalore, she said, now you sleep for a few hours, and at midnight we're going to go to see the mother. And so she woke me up a certain time in the night and gave me some food, and she said, get dressed, and we're going to see the mother. So we drove to a stadium, football stadium in Bangalore, huge stadium where there were, I think, honestly, millions of people there, millions. I've never seen crowds so big. And she said, these people have been here for 2 days, and far past the people, I could just see a little lit stage, and a few people like ants on the stage. And she said, there's a woman sitting up there. She's the mother. And she's been hugging people for 3 days without sleeping, without going to the bathroom, without eating. She's just been hugging. And she said, there's millions of people here, and they're all here to get a hug from the mother. And she's not going to stop until every last one has had a hug. So she said, but don't worry. I know someone who's very close to her, so we don't have to wait. And we got taken all the way up to the front, up onto the stage. And within a few minutes, I was standing in front of this seated woman. And she looked at me and she said exactly what Swami used to say to me all the time. Where did you come from? And she doesn't usually speak much English, but she looked at me and she said, where did you come from? And I suddenly could see Swami in her face. And I said, I came from Baba. And she said, Baba. He is the sun and I am the moon. I only reflect his light. And she gave me a hug, and I cried and I cried. She hugged me, I don't know for how long. It felt like many minutes. She just kept hugging me, and every once in a while she'd pull me away and look at me, and I just burst into tears again. And all the pain and all the fear and all the anguish I had from those months came out. Just so much pain, and I'm sure so much pain from my whole life and my childhood, and I don't know how many past lives, but it was so obvious that Swami had engineered this whole experience. And in that moment, all of the anger I had at Swami just dissolved. And I realized he was the mother. He was the mother's love. That, he gave so many discourses about the mother during that time, and he was always saying, if the child reaches for a hot burner on the stove and the mother slaps his hand away, it's not because she's angry, it's because she's protecting him. But the child will feel that he's being punished. But the mother will know it's not punishment, it's protection. And, I just knew in that moment when she said that it was Swami who had done all of it. And I realized that his power was not in the darshan, it was not in the gifts, it was not in the closeness, it was not in the prestige or the things that come from being closer to Swami. But his power was in that he had organized and manipulated every minute of my life for a year to get me there. That he had saved me, that he had transformed me. It was so much more than what I thought, I thought everything was about people rushing to get close to Swami, wearing the right kurta pajam, wearing the, getting the right ring from Swami, getting the right watch, getting the, wearing. there was a certain thing you had to have your like ID card in this little plastic holder in your pocket and a picture of Swami in there, so everyone who looked at you would see Swami's face coming through the white pocket on your shirt. It was all about being perfect, right? And you see that with the students, this perfect little army of boys wearing exactly the same clothes and pressed a certain way, all by the same Dobie and made all by the same tailor in the same shop. So of course I got my clothes made by the same tailor and I got my clothes pressed by the same Dobie because I wanted to be a part of it. And that's my Western, I think it's human thinking, but it's this idea that you can act your way into being something you're not. And Swami tore me apart and revealed something inside of me that I could never have imagined was there. So while I was in Bangalore, Swami moved to Whitefield. And Swami moved to Whitefield. And at Whitefield Ashram, it was as if all the amazing things had come back to me because nobody there knew they weren't supposed to let me in. So they let me in. I got front row seats again. Swami gave me a lot of attention again. All the staff was different there. And of course, I knew that now this trustee and his wife who had a little house in the back right next to Swami's house. So I would go in every day and have, meals with them and watch Swami at his house and, feed the cows, which were right next to Swami's house, between their house and Swami's house. And I felt again very special, very special, very special. And I had a lot more experiences at that time, but what happened is eventually I came back to the U.S. and I came back and I suddenly saw what a different person I had become after 6 months in Swami's presence. How I had transformed. All of my old interests were gone. All of the things that used to be important to me were no longer important. And my life and my heart had really opened to something new. And before I went to India, I had never finished college. I dropped out, just before I finished. And I started to experience Swami, like many of you do, I'm sure, and like I do sometimes. In every place I went, I would see a flash of orange in the crowd and know, oh, that's Swami near me. Or I would be walking and I'd see Swami's hair. I'd start to have that daily experience of Swami in my life wherever I was. Or some days I'd be praying or meditating and I'd feel Swami around me and I'd look up and I'd see Swami's hair on top of my head. Just that halo of Swami's beauty surrounding me and protecting me and keeping me close. And I went back to school. I finished college. I lived in a basement out in somewhere in Queens. I lived in Queens for a year and went to college in Manhattan in a devotee's basement. Nita and Nitin Pai, who were members of the Flushing Center long ago, took me to live with them while I finished school and gave me a lot of love and good food. Which, if any Indian family wants to adopt me, I really need good Indian food every day to be happy. And I don't know how to cook it. That was a wonderful experience too, because I never really had this sort of family experience that I never had that kind of love. I never felt that kind of love at home that I witnessed with Indian families, that I saw in the ashram, that I've learned to experience from Sai families. And that was such a transformational time for me. But also, during that time, I started having a dream about Swami that repeated almost every night. So I was going to centers, I was living with the Sai family, we were having bhajan in the house every week, we were having morning prayers in the house, and yet every night I was having this dream that I was with my suitcase approaching the Ganesh gate in the ashram, coming to see Swami. And that posted in the Ganesh gate, there was a guard booth there. There used to be a guard booth. Anyway, it's a little different now. And there was a big photo of me, and the words "Do not admit." And over the mandir, I could see Swami's room on the back of Purnachandra with the round balcony, and Swami standing on the balcony, laughing at me. I could just see Swami bent over, laughing at me, as I'm looking at the gate and looking up at the sign that says "Do not admit" in my face, and the Sevadal saying, "I'm sorry, sir, you can't come in." And why Swami gave me that dream every night for years and years. And so for a few years, I was really afraid to go back. I was afraid that I would get there and they really wouldn't let me in. I really was. And during that time, I had another dream of Swami about publishing a book. And I had been working on the Sai Sarthi newsletter for years, and 3-4 years at that point. And I had a dream that Swami drove up to the driveway of the house I was living in a Mercedes, and he got out and walked towards me. And I got down on my knees, and I was holding out a book, a big, thick, brown book. And written in gold letters on the front were the words Sai Sarthi, the book. And so I took it as a sign that we were supposed to publish a book. And we designed the book. We put the best stories in it. And someone took the book to India to present it to Swami. And she showed it to him, and she asked him to sign it. And he said, not until Brian comes. So I took it as a sign that, I should at least try to go to India and see if they throw me out. That rejection that I had from Swami was the worst rejection I'd ever experienced in my life. It was the worst pain I'd ever had. It was followed by the most amazing, loving experiences, but I was so afraid of the pain. I was so afraid of the rejection. I was so afraid of the judgment of the thousands of people in the ashram who, I don't know what they thought of me, because I still don't know what Swami said to them. But it has to be something bad, right? They wouldn't talk to me for months. So I was terrified to go back. And in that ashram, at least from my perspective at the time, all that really matters there is your prestige, where you sit, who you're close to. Those are the things that seem to matter on the outside. And I had only just started the inward journey with Swami at that time. So I was still really afraid of the outside, really afraid of what people would think of me, really afraid of the Sevadals throwing me out. I still am, but I know today that what really matters is how I am with Swami, what my position is with Swami. It doesn't matter what I look like there, but so I went back with the book, and Swami signed it, and it got published by the Book Trust, and I stayed for quite a long time, and out of that experience, I ended up working at the hospital. And working at the hospital, I ended up working on some software project with outside vendors who were creating hospital management software, which was a fairly new thing in India at the time. I thought that I could start a business in India out of that experience. So I went to Bangalore, and I rented an office, and I designed it, and I hired workers, and I bought computers, and the internet was fairly new then, and I thought it would be amazing to, do internet projects from India, and I had no idea what I was getting into. And I ended up getting connected with a real scoundrel who, told lots of lies and stole lots of money, and I had interviews for a job position, and one after another, young men came to the interviews, and I had a big photo of Swami in my office, and they were all students. Every last one of them who came for the interviews was a former Sai student looking for a job. And they kept giving me the same message. Why are you here? Go back to Swami. Why are you here? Go back to Swami. And Swami didn't bring you to India to start a business. Swami wants you with him. If you're here, you should be with him. And at that time, I hadn't seen Swami for almost 6 months because this business had been so all-encompassing, and this guy turned out to be such a crook, my business partner, that I was afraid if I left even for a day to go see Swami and Puttaparthi from Bangalore, that bad things would happen. And so what happened is one of those former students said, Swami's in Whitefield now. I'll come and get you every morning on my bike and take you to Whitefield. And sure enough, he came every morning on his bike and with the 2 helmets, and he drove me to Whitefield, and every morning I would have Swami's darshan, and I would come back to the office. And, during that time, Swami didn't talk to me very much, but I started having the dreams again. I started having I had Vibhuti on my photo. I attended a Sai Bhajan in Bangalore, some group that meets, and I realized that I had taken the wrong road, right? That Swami had brought me to India to be with him, and I had misunderstood again what Swami was doing for me. That it wasn't about, again, he didn't care if I made a lot of money, that I had a business, that it wasn't about India. And he had said many times, the only reason for you to come to India is to see me. But I had just, following my human desire, I'd followed the wrong path again and again and again. So one day in Darshan, I was sitting with that boy, and because he was a former student, we got good seats every day, and Swami said to me, "It's time for you to go." And I had done something to be able to stay in India, because you weren't supposed to stay more than 6 months, and so I'd gotten like a 6-month extension on my visa, and it had just come through like a week before, and Swami said, "It's time for you to go." And I said, "Swami, I have 6 months on my visa." And he said, "Your visa is canceled, leave." And so a lot of amazing things happened, because I shouldn't have been able to leave so easily. I should have paid a lot of money to change my ticket. I just paid a lot of money to make it 6 months later. And but everything worked out. Some Sai devotee ran into me and said, "Oh, I'll get your ticket changed." And another one said, "Oh, I know someone at Air India." And it all worked out, and I left after a few days. And as soon as I left, as soon as I got back to the U.S., that whole business fell apart. I got a message from some government, CBI or something in India, saying this guy's wanted in 3 states, and we're chasing him. He's absconded. He's taken everything from your office. The workers, didn't get their money. He hadn't paid them, and the landlord hadn't gotten his rent, and it all just fell apart. And I had no choice. I thought I would just stay in America for a little while and go back to India, but then all these people in India needed money, because this guy had stolen all the money from the bank, and I had to sort of settle everything there. So I ended up getting a job in America and working, which was kind of a novel idea, because at that time I'd been traveling all over India for a few years, and living with Swami, and then this business. So I got a job, and what normally happened. I started working, I started making money, I started buying things, I started having a lot of worldly desires again, because of the money, wanting more of this, better that, better car, better house, and I kept getting promoted and promoted and promoted and promoted. And during those years, I got farther away from Swami and farther away from Swami, and the dreams became very few, and I stopped going to the Sai centers, and I had a job where I was working like 7 days a week, all day, all night, traveling a lot, and I got very far from Swami, and what happened? Then it all repeats again. So I have a little bit more time. Do I have a little more time? So in about 2003, out of the blue, I just got the sudden desire, like that, when that experience comes and you just know you have to go to Puttaparthi, you have to go, and it has to be right now. And that feeling came over me after so long of not seeing Swami. After 4 years, I didn't go, and suddenly this desire was just so immensely strong. And I got to the ashram, and Swami came up to me on the very first day, and he said to me, "The only purpose of education is character development." And I said, "Okay." And he came to me a second day, and he said, "The only purpose of education is character development." And I said, "Okay." And he came to me the third day, and he slapped me across the face with an envelope he was holding, and he said, "The only purpose of education is character development." And that's really all that happened on that trip. But what happened is, as soon as I got back to the U.S., I started thinking, maybe Swami wants me to go back to school. Maybe Swami wants to go back to school. So I started looking at schools, and within a few months, I heard about this school in India called the Indian School of Business, which was started by 3 different best business schools in America. And I thought, well, maybe it's a sign, it's in Hyderabad. Maybe Swami wants me to go to school in Hyderabad, and I can go back and forth to the ashram. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say one important thing, which is the other thing that happened on that trip, was that I'd had dreams just before going that I was being interviewed for a job at the university. And in my dream, I had an interview with Swami, and Swami said, "You have to teach internet at my university." So when I was there on that trip, when Swami said the only purpose of education is character development, I went to the university and I said I had this dream and, I want to teach internet. And they said, Swami has said that no devotee should ever use the internet. And, of course, now everything in the ashram is on the internet. But they threw me out. So I thought, well, Swami doesn't want me to work in education, so he must want me to go back to school and get another degree. So I started looking, and I heard about this Indian School of Business, and I thought, well, that's perfect. I'll go to Puttaparthi, I'll take Swami's blessings, and then I'll go to Hyderabad and have the interview. And I got to the ashram, and again, Swami walked up to me, and the very first thing he said is, the only purpose for education is character development. And I said, Swami, I'm going for a university interview in Hyderabad. Will you bless me? And he walked away. And this happened 3 days in a row. And each day for 3 days, he said the same thing. Again, the only purpose for education is character development. So after evening darshan, I got on the train, and I went to Hyderabad. I went on an overnight train. I got to Hyderabad. It was not the city I was expecting. I thought, everyone in India was vegetarian. I thought, the ashram is a little bit of a charmed existence in India, and I'd never been anywhere else really except Bangalore. And I got to Hyderabad at 5 a.m. Everywhere I looked were these the train station was surrounded by a slaughter yard. There were all these butchers killing goats and cutting up fish. The train station was surrounded by dead animals, which I'd never seen in India. And every restaurant I found was non-veg, and it was such a scary experience. And a rickshaw pulled up to me playing some very beautiful music, and the guy pulled up and he had a big Shirdi Sai sticker in the window, and he was a Muslim Shirdi Baba devotee. And I had been standing there praying, Swami, you've got to help me. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. No, this is a really scary place. And the guy pulled up and he said, oh, you want a veg hotel? And so he took me to some place, and I ate some food. And then I was wearing my darshan whites, and he said, oh, I know exactly the right place to take you, Shirdi Sai Lodge, which was a vegetarian-only lodge run by Shirdi Sai devotees. And they arranged a taxi for me, and they took me to my school interview. And I went to this Indian School of Business where I got interviewed by a Wharton professor from Philadelphia. And he said to me, now you tell me why you're here. And I told him the whole story about Swami, and the only purpose for education is character development. And he hit his fist on the table and he said, are you kidding me? The only purpose for a business school education is to make a lot of money. And I stood up and I said, I think I'm in the wrong place, sorry, and I left. And I came back to the U.S., realizing that was a little bit of a folly. Swami keeps giving me these clues, but I always misinterpret the clues. He says the only purpose for education is character development. I think I'm supposed to teach at the university. And then I think I'm supposed to go to Hyderabad and study there. And I got back to the U.S., and a Sai devotee I know had just moved to Philadelphia and gotten a job teaching at a university in Philadelphia. And she asked me if I would. She had a lot of boxes of stuff to take to her office, and she said, would you come to Philly this weekend and help me, get all my boxes and bring them to the office and help me get things set up? She had bought some bookcases that had to be assembled, and I said, sure, I'd be glad to come with you. And the school is called Villanova University. It's just outside of Philly on the main line. And we got to the gates of Villanova, which was founded by a Catholic saint, in the 1500s, and written over the gate of the university are the words, the only purpose for education is character development, and right outside the business school. And when we walked into that building, it was the day before Christmas and the school was completely empty. There was nobody there. But when we walked in, the dean of the business school was there. And I said to him, I was kind of in shock, and I said, this thing happened, and he said, tell me the story. And I said, well, you might not understand, it's kind of a weird spiritual thing. And I ended up telling him the whole story, and he said, if you want to, our business school starts in a few weeks. If you want to join, I'll admit you right now. So I told him the whole story about Swami, and he admitted me on the spot, and I went to business school. And when I graduated, I thought, well, now I have to go back to, it took 2.5 years and cost a lot of money, and thought I have to go back to Swami now and tell him, because maybe he has plans for me now. I've done this thing, I finished this MBA, maybe Swami has a job for me now, and maybe now they'll give me a job at the university, And because it's my desire, right? I want to get closer to Swami. I want to be the right person so Swami will love me more. I want to be, I want to have the right credentials so they'll hire me to work at the university or at the ashram so I can escape this world that I live in and only live in the ashram, which is, of course, not what Swami wants for me at all. So I go there. And actually, I went on a trek in the Himalayas. I went to Gangotri and climbed a mountain there and had some amazing spiritual experiences. And then I went to the ashram, and it was really life-changing, that pilgrimage, walking. We climbed this mountain for 3 weeks, and when I got to the ashram, everything was so different than it had been a few years before because Swami wasn't walking anymore. He was in a wheelchair. He was very withdrawn from people. He'd had the hip, thing happened, and every darshan would go by and they would just play the music, and Swami would get pushed around the hall in his wheelchair, and then he would leave. And there was no interaction. He wasn't taking letters. He wasn't talking to people. He wasn't social. And this was maybe 2005, and June of 2005. And we were there for about a week, and there was no interaction with Swami, no communication with Swami. I didn't have any dreams. Nothing amazing happened. And the morning of the last day, I had a dream. And in my dream, I had written 2 letters to Swami in 2 envelopes. And in my dream, I was on my knees holding up the 2 letters, and Swami walked up to me, and he took one of the letters. And in my mind, in my dream, I knew what that meant. I had written 2 different things, and he took one. And so I just knew I had to write those letters. So I wrote the letters. I had 2 very different life paths I wanted to follow. And I wrote the letters, and I went to darshan. And as usual, the wheelchair just went right past me. I was nowhere near the front. Swami made his rounds. The bhajans were playing. He was sitting in the wheelchair on the veranda, and without interacting with anyone. And when the bhajans started, a bunch of people got up and moved. They left, and I was able to scoot forward to the very front. And Swami stood up and was holding onto the railing, which he would do he was still strong enough, I guess, to do in those days. He would hold that brass rail and stand up during the bhajan. And suddenly I felt his eyes. He was looking at me. He was staring at me. And I held up the 2 letters like this. And Swami went to the steps, and he walked right up to me. And the guys were following him, chasing him, afraid he was going to fall, I think. And he walked right up to me, and he took one of the letters, and he looked at me and said, "Why are you chasing fame and career and money? The only thing that matters is me. These years are very precious, and I won't be here for long." And he walked away. And suddenly I wanted him to take the other letter too, but he just walked away from me. And that changed my life, because I got back to New York and I was just evaluating Swami's words. I'd watched over the years as he went from being really strong and healthy to weaker, spending less time, walking around less. Now he's in a wheelchair, not walking at all. And he said, these years are precious. What are you doing chasing fame and career and money? And I realized, what is the purpose of my life? I had this great job. I was making a lot of money. I'd just gone to school and spent $100,000 on an MBA at a great school. But I realized in the course of that process, I really didn't want to have anything to do with business. It doesn't interest me at all. What am I doing with my life? Why am I... And I did, everything I did because it seemed like Swami led me to it. He led me from one thing to the next. A lot of the times through my own misunderstanding, but he led me somehow. And he's proven again and again that he's that invisible hand guiding my life. But when I got back to New York, I found out that while I was gone, a new president had taken over my company. And department by department, he was laying off huge numbers of people. And he sent someone, and he laid off my boss, and I got promoted. And all within the course of about 3 weeks, they asked me to lay off almost my whole staff. And I said I'm absolutely not willing to do it. It was all a very nasty time. It wasn't pleasant, and the things they were asking me to do were not very nice. So I went to Human Resources and I said, I can't do what they're asking me to do. What should I, what's the next step? And other than just quitting. And I don't know what happened, but the next day, the Human Resources guy got back to me and said, if you'll sign this little contract, we'll let you go. We'll pay your salary for the next 3 years, and you'll keep your benefits, and you just you can't tell anyone about anything that happened here. And so I signed that contract and got on a plane a week later to India. And thank God for direct deposit. And so I got back to the ashram, having just been there about a month before. And it's funny, when I was there in October. I had been there in October and then when I came back to my office, all these things happened. So Swami had said then, come for birthday, stay for Christmas. And I thought, yeah, right, I've just used up all my vacation days coming to India. I can't come back for birthday and stay for Christmas. I don't have any more vacation days. And you know what? Swami was right. I arrived 2 days before birthday, and I stayed through Christmas. And it all started over again. I got a job in the ashram. I got staff seating. I got a nice room. The whole game started over again. Not as close to Swami, not the same amount of interaction, because nobody was getting that kind of interaction the last 4 or 5 years. But I ended up spending between 6 and 9 months there every year for the last 5 years, since 2006, since November of 2006, between 6 and 9 months every year. And what happened is I ended up living in a building with all Indian staff members. And so after 5 years of being there, for 6 or 9 months of every year, sure enough, the inevitable finally happens. I'll just say, I had decided that I wanted to spend the rest of my life in the ashram. And like we all did, I thought Swami was going to live for another 11 years. And so January 1st was a Friday. And on Friday, in Darshan, someone had told me that the way to get permanent resident status is to give Swami a letter with your passport in Darshan. So I took my passport and a letter to Darshan, and I put the passport inside and I sealed it with the letter telling Swami, I want to become a permanent resident of the ashram and have permanent staff status, so I want you to sponsor me for a long-term 10-year visa, 10-year residential permit to stay in India. And it was all my desire to stay there, my desire to be closer to Swami, my desire to get more attention, my desire to get, the status in the ashram. And Swami took it, and I thought, yay, Swami took it. That means something great's going to happen, right? He knows what he takes and what he doesn't take. And I'd certainly tried to give him lots of things in the past that he ignored. So Monday morning, there's a knock on my room door. And it's a Sevadal. And the Sevadal has my passport. And he said, Swami said to give this back to you. He wants you to leave. And I was just absolutely in shock. And I had 2 friends visiting in the room, and I was sitting there talking to them, saying, I don't know what to do. What should I go to Darshan and try to talk to Swami? Should I send a letter today? They said, yes, you better send a letter. So I started writing a letter to Swami to give to the courier to take to Swami that afternoon. And there was another knock on the door, and I opened it, and it was a man, all in white, and he said, I'm so-and-so from the Prashanti service, which is the ashram security. And he said, listen, Swami wants you to leave. When are you going? And I said, well, I can't just, my job's not finished. I got all these things going on. He said, I said, well, could I have a few days at least to get my, figure out what I'm going to do and change my plane ticket? He said, okay. 30 minutes later, he knocked on the door again. No, you have to go now. Before lunch. And it was maybe 8 or 9 in the morning. So, what I'd been doing in the ashram in the past couple of years is working on a project, as Sundar mentioned, called the Pigeon Project, which was a project sanctioned by Swami and sponsored and paid for by the Ottawa, Canada Sai Center, to put those little metal pigeon spikes, which you see on a lot of New York buildings, around all the chandeliers, on top of every column in the hall, every place where the pigeons can make nests and lay eggs. Because wherever a pigeon's egg hatches, the babies that come from that spot will always come back to the same spot to lay their eggs and have more babies. So the goal was to get the pigeons out of the hall so they stop laying eggs there, and so no new generations of pigeons want to come there. And it's been very successful. I don't know if anyone's been to the hall. There are still pigeons, but the students in Swami's MBA program had done some kind of a statistics project saying we reduced it by like 92%, which is a lot better. And but it wasn't done. The project wasn't done. And during the time working in that hall, we would go in every day after morning darshan, and again every night after evening darshan, and to install these pieces. And in the hours in between, all day long, we'd have some workers making these pieces that we would install after darshans. And so often we'd be working in the hall, from 9 o'clock in the night until sometimes 1 or 2 in the morning, and then again in the morning after morning darshan until 1 in the afternoon when the ladies come to clean the hall. During that time, I had a lot of experiences with Swami. Well, not directly with Swami, but from Swami. So, for instance, one day we were working, and I guess making a lot of noise, and making some noise. Or not, I don't think we were making any noise, but someone came running out of Swami's house making this gesture. So, well, that means eat, right? Everyone who's been to India knows this means eat. So he's coming from Swami's house, and he's yelling something about Swami's dining room, and making this gesture. So I come running down the ladder, racing down. Yes, I'll eat with Swami. He says, no. Swami says, you're making too much noise. Be quiet. He's trying to eat his dinner. Next day, when Swami's coming through darshan, giving darshan, they stop at a certain spot, and I see Swami pointing up at one of the columns. And he pulls some ladies from the crowd. The ladies are sitting right in front of him. He pulls some ladies up, and he's pointing up there, and they're all looking up like this. And, 6 or 8 of the sort of VIP ladies. And then Swami sends someone to his house and brings someone from his house, and he's pointing up. And eventually there's like 20, 30 people looking up there. And then, someone comes walking over to me. And he says, look, Swami's really upset. He's over there telling all these people he's really mad at you. He says, tell them this isn't working. This thing they're doing isn't working, And I was just crushed. And he never talked to me about it. When he came around for darshan, he never looked at me. He never turned to me. He had just told like 30 people that my work was useless and that it was no good. And so, these kind of things happened a lot. But that morning when the security came to my house, they said, you've got to leave the ashram right away. Swami's very unhappy with you and he wants you out. And I thought, well, this is my dream, right? My dream is coming true. They're throwing me out of the ashram. And, I knew, at that point, I knew a lot of sort of higher people in the ashram. I thought, I'll certainly, just make a few phone calls and get this all sorted out, whatever the problem is. And it really felt like a disaster. It really felt like the end of my life. This was the ashram was the only thing I wanted. To spend the rest of my life with Swami I had decided this was the only thing left for me. This is what I wanted. Nothing in the world could satisfy me anymore. There's nothing in America I wanted anymore. There's nothing outside the ashram I wanted anymore. I just wanted to be there with Swami. And I don't know what provoked that desire in me, what made me think that was the purpose in my life, to go to a little ashram in a dusty village far out in India and fight pigeons. It wasn't pretty. And what possessed me to think this was the path for the rest of my life? I was 40 then. Swami wanted me to give up the rest of my life and only be there with him. And, he was very clear. Get out. It's done. Go. And I went to Bangalore, and I spent weeks, sulking around, feeling sad, waiting for my ticket to come up to fly back to the U.S. And I just want to say, as soon as Swami got sick, and I suddenly realized why he had done what he had done for me. He does millions of things for all of us, right? He's orchestrating everything for all of us, but it's only when I look back that I can understand why Swami has done anything for me in my life. Why he gave me back my passport. Because they told me, once you give Swami your passport, the Indian government won't let you travel for 3 years. So if Swami had kept my passport and submitted it for that residential permit, I wouldn't be able to travel for 3 years. I would be in India right now without Swami. I dreamt that I was on a bus with Swami, that I had come out of a big bhajan hall and gotten onto a bus with Swami. And we were standing holding the straps, at the top of the bus. And I kept being afraid that Swami was going to fall over. So I was holding the strap with one hand and holding onto Swami's shoulder with the other hand to make sure he didn't fall. And there was a third man with us. And Swami was looking at me and he said, "Sing." He said, "Sing." I never sing. I'm a terrible singer, and people would run from a bhajan hall if I sang. But Swami said, "Sing." So I started singing. And he looked at me and he said, "Very happy, very happy." And I said, "Now you sing, Swami. You have to sing." So Swami sang a song. Then he looked at the third man and he said, "You sing." And the man started singing, but he couldn't finish the bhajan. His voice wasn't strong enough. So I looked at Swami and said, "Swami, we have to sing with him or he's not going to be able to finish." So Swami and I both sang with him. And at that moment, Swami looked at me and he said, "Now you're ready to return to my ashram and become the most important permanent resident." And he waved his hand and he made a ring, a very funny ring, but a ring. And I took it from him and I put it on my right hand. And I was looking at it because it wasn't a nice ring. It didn't have a nice stone in it. It didn't have a big emerald or a big diamond. It wasn't gold. It looked like a piece of steel bar that had just been cut. It was almost as long as my finger. It was a good 2 inches long. And I thought, well, I can't tell Swami that this isn't a nice ring. So I just held it up and I said, "Swami, is this right? Is this what you intended?" And he tapped it. And then he reached for my other hand and he said, "No, this finger, wedding ring." And I took off the ring and I put it on that finger. And that was the end of the dream. But then I woke up and I saw on the internet that Swami had died during the night when I was asleep. And I knew it just was the message for me that. What I didn't say is that the day I left India, I got a call from the ashram saying, "Swami says, 'Where are you? Come back right away.'" So I knew when I finally flew out of India that, whatever was the reason Swami had sent me away, it was okay to come back. Now, of course, it was okay to come back 3 hours before my visa expired and my flight left. So I couldn't go back. So when this dream came, it was the most amazing relief. It was the most amazing thing. I'd always wanted a ring from Swami, and he'd never given me one. And the thing I'd most wanted was to become a permanent resident, and he hadn't permitted it. And the gift that was in that dream was that moment of helping someone else who couldn't finish the song himself. And I'm one of those people. All my life, I've never really had a desire. I've never really had something I really wanted. I've never had a goal. I've never had a purpose. And from the moment I had that dream, it was so clear to me what my purpose was, to help other people. And like I said when I started, the love that I felt when I walked in here today is another message from Swami. Because I have to carry that with me everywhere I go. I have to carry Swami's love with me everywhere I go. And I have to look for that in other people. And that's kind of what I'm doing with my life today. I have the ring now. I am a permanent resident in Swami's ashram now. It's just not in Puttaparthi. And I know that, and that's with me everywhere I go. And I don't need anything else now except that love. So it was a beautiful reminder today to come here and experience that. And I've gone on a long, long time, and I hope it hasn't been too boring. But it's my story, and that's the gift Swami's given. So thank you all, and Saram.